Okay, so we're live now. So we're recording. It's the inaugural episode of Get the Name of This. It's called Timbo and the Shit Show. However, they're not going to let me put Shit Show on iTunes. So it's got to be like the Shit Show. It's got to be like the little dash and everything. So
is it going to be a bleep?
It won't be a bleep, but it'll just be like a pound sign or something like that. So that way, I guess they don't get offended when they're perusing through. So, anyways, the first guest, new show. People have been asking about doing the podcast again. So that's what we're doing. So Joe Steckel, my brother, is the first guest that we're going to have on here. What he did was he just actually got back from hiking the Appalachian Trail. And that's from where to where?
It's from Springer Mountain in Georgia to Mount Katahdin in Maine. So it's about 2,200 miles from point A to point B.
Huh. And that's... How long does it typically take somebody to walk that?
On average, it varies. You had Scott Jurek this year who set the record. I think his was around 48 days or something. He beat the previous record for assisted hiking, or I think it was 46 days actually. He beat the past record by 3 hours. And I took around 4 months and 5 days, but the average is around 6 to 7 months.
Okay. So what how do you get started in something like this? Where you can't just decide out of the blue that one day you're just going to walk the Appalachian or hike the Appalachian Trail. It's probably got to be some prep that goes into it, I imagine.
There's definitely some preparation. I probably took about a year casually planning to do it because I didn't really want to wait till the last minute like some people did on the trail. And there were some people that they got laid off from their job or they quit their job, and 2 weeks later they were on the trail, whereas I sort of took my time in getting all my ducks in a row, so that was ready for it.
Is that a good idea? Like to just go and wing it? Like is it I feel like that's going to end bad if you just decide, "Oh crap, I'm out of work now. I guess I'll hike the Appalachian Trail. I need some stuff, I imagine."
Really it comes down to just person to person. You're never really going to have someone just go out and completely wing it and just sort of and hope to succeed. There has to be some sort of preparation behind it. There were some people that day one came out with literally they went to Walmart a couple days prior and bought all their stuff from Walmart for dirt cheap, and they showed up and they had mice get into their stuff. They had their sleeping bag completely soaking wet the first day, and those are the people that get weeded out early on. So
I remember when we were a kid, I don't know, to me, it didn't seem like you really were like an adventure type of person. I was going to say, adjust your mic a little bit. Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
Better?
Yeah, that's better. You didn't really seem like you were into all these. What the heck got you into all this camping and hiking and rock climbing and all that stuff? Like, what point did you decide, like, that's the kind of person. That's what Joe Steckel is basically going to be. This is the route I'm taking. There's all these other routes I can choose, but this particular one, this is the one that I'm going on.
I guess the adventure bug caught me around. My mom, our mom would say.
I was going to say, shit. Are you telling me something I don't know? Oh God.
But she would probably say. Diamond Head, hiking Diamond Head would be the inaugural.
Oh, we're in Hawaii.
I guess.
Do you even remember that? Do you remember?
I remember parts of it. I remember
Very
crying
vague.
up the whole way. Yeah, and then seeing the view. But other than that, yeah, that was great. But it didn't really give me a sense of accomplishment. But I guess really what triggered is, it seemed like fun to go into something like that. And I did an Isle Royal trip when I graduated high school. With a couple of buddies, and got to go out and experience nature in a different way that I hadn't really been able to before. And so that was really awesome. And then I did a second trip with Ryan Keeling and Quinn Osgood, two guys who also hiked the trail this year, but they left a month and a half ahead of me. I had hiked with them in Minnesota doing the Superior Hiking Trail, or a section of it, and we were out for 110 miles of that. So that was sort of my extended hike before I did the Appalachian Trail. And it was really after that I sort of decided that I think a longer trail would be something I could definitely accomplish and something I wanted to do.
Right. To decide to do a really long trail. But yeah, but Diamond Head, yeah, I guess maybe. You know, we went just not too long ago. It was nothing that was all that exciting. There was probably at least 200 people hiking up there with you. There was a bunch of people, and it there were people there. Honest to God, there was a chick wearing high heels, like she was just dressing to go to the club, and she was climbing it. There was a dude in a suit who was climbing it.
Yeah,
I
but
was like, what the fuck is this?
I mean, I guess it was different for me, maybe because I was 2 or 3 years old. So
yeah,
it's a little
weird.
bit different.
It's weird to see, even if you just say I'm going on a hike up any mountain. I'm like, why the hell am I wearing fancy shoes and a suit and I'm wearing a cocktail dress?
Well, that was actually
climbing.
funny. When Mom and Emily came up to Maine to meet me after I finished, we went to Acadia National Park and then climbed up to Cadillac Mountain.
Okay.
And that's where, if you're there at the top of the mountain at sunrise, you're one of the first people in the U.S. to see the sunrise. And because I think you're at the highest point on the East Coast.
Oh, okay.
And so there was a guy up on Cadillac Mountain as the sun was setting. He's in his full suit. He's got his laptop perched out, and he's got these really nice shined up shoes, and he's working on paperwork. Who God knows?
Maybe
what.
he was a day trader or something. I want to
Maybe.
be right here when it opens, so my Wi-Fi signal is just at the perfect spot. I'll beat everybody.
I don't know what was going through his head, but
yeah, it's a little freaking weird. So back to how do you prepare? How do you say you decide you're gonna do it? You decide you're not gonna just jump right into it because you got laid off of work or whatever. But what do you do to get ready for such a long, grueling walk? Which basically, man, you got to think your joints and your feet are just not gonna be ready to walk every day for weeks and weeks, months and months.
Well, your body warms up to it in the morning. I mean, and it's not like you're not taking any breaks. I mean, there are some people who do it without a break. Like Scott Jurek, I think he maybe took 1 or 2 days where he didn't do anything, but then he had to pay for it by adding on bigger miles on the other days. But with me, I took maybe 6 or 7 0 days and maybe 15 or maybe a little more of Nero days. And a Nero for me was 10 or less miles per day, or per that day. And
now, what does that, to people that don't know what a Nero, Euro, or whatever it is, what does that mean?
So a 0 is where you don't do any miles. Okay. It's a 0
Easy
mile
enough.
day. And then a Nero miles is near 0. So not too complicated. But
You're just walking? You're just kind of walking around?
I mean, let's say you're 10 miles to town, and then there's a shelter or something that's 5 or so miles past it, and you can do 10 miles, which I would consider a Nero, and then you either stay in town or you can push the other 5 to the shelter, and you can spend the entire day in town.
Oh, okay.
It just depends on your pace as well. So, but as far as preparation goes, I mean, there's definitely the danger of over preparation, like paralyzing yourself by basically packing on way too much weight of things that might happen. So, I mean, people will say, "Oh, you should carry bear mace." Bear really aren't really the main concern on the trail. It's probably the mice that you should be more concerned about, because they'll get into your stuff more often than the bears will. However, there was a guy who got attacked in his hammock in the Smokies by a bear, but I think that's a rare occurrence. Preparation for me, I mean, yeah, I said I did it pretty casually. I would hop on the web maybe, I don't know, 2 to 3 times a week and research different gear, read different reviews. I look at a lot of YouTube videos, people that have hiked the trail in the past and went through their gear that they had brought with them, and then also what they ended up with at the very end of the trail. So they do like a comparison shot.
Right, just to see what they could have done without.
Right.
What they really...
And the cool thing was that I already had quite a bit of the equipment already. It was just a few things here and there that I needed to get in order to complete the hiker ensemble, I guess.
And then how much would you say that if someone's just going to buy it, they don't all have it, how much is that stuff going to cost if you said like in total?
I mean, it depends on how nice of stuff you want to get, I guess, is...
Like, I would say like mid-range, like what's like a medium, like it's not the greatest stuff, but
you could
it's
look at,
okay.
It's probably going to be a couple thousand. It's probably going to be a couple
you need
$1,000.
a couple $1,000 in gear. And then how much money do you need on the trail?
Again, this also comes down to how comfortable you want to be. So there were people on the trail who probably every 3 days or so were going into town and staying at a hotel or motel or what have you.
That's not hiking.
But that's
a bunch of bullshit is
what
what that is.
Then there's also the phrase "hike your own hike," so you don't criticize other people for what they want to do.
I'm criticizing everybody. I don't even care.
But I don't know. With me, it was probably there were days where, I mean, in the beginning, it was more often that I would stay somewhere because you're sort of warming up to it. But otherwise, it was probably 7 to 11 days between staying somewhere. And once I got into the rhythm of it, because once you get into town, really, you just want to get your stuff and go.
Yeah. All right, go ahead and continue.
Let's see. But yeah, I mean, with staying places or it's within budget. So there's every kind of extreme. So you have the people who are doing it really cheaply and maybe only have $1 a mile as their budget, which was really close to what mine was. I think I was around $1.50 a mile, and there were other people who had maybe 5 to 10, 20,000 at their disposal, and of course their pace was much slower because they were staying at places and doing lower mileage per day. And then you had the other kind of the spectrum where they would maybe push really hard for a couple days and maybe cover 60 to 80 miles in a few days, like a couple to 3 days, and then they would take 2 to 3 days off. And it just really depends on your hiking style and what you're comfortable with. Yeah, I only took maybe 6 or 7 0 days, and I stayed somewhere overnight and just didn't do anything either the next day or the day prior. It just depends on how your body's feeling and making sure that you're okay to keep moving. Because injury is another thing that can happen to you, and that can set you out. Or disease. You can catch Lyme disease, and you'll be out for a couple weeks.
Yeah, you don't want to catch Lyme disease. What about tick? Well, like, is there any other physical preparation? I mean, that's a lot of the gear stuff. I mean, you really just buy. So, I mean, there's not if you got money, you can buy it, But is there any other gear stuff or any other physical stuff that you need to do?
I mean, there's people who start literally from ground zero, and their first 2 weeks are your training. I mean, you can do some. I mean, it depends on the kind of terrain that you're around. Because if you can do day hikes, like practice hikes, workout hikes in your backyard to get you sort of prepared for that, in Michigan we don't have anything like that compares to that sort of terrain.
Like uphill, downhill, uphill, downhill.
Yeah, I mean, even just like adapting to the kind of terrain that you're going to be hiking in, at least at the start. I mean, maybe the closest thing we have to that is Heinz Drive, which doesn't even come close.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I did some running just to sort of build up my legs a little bit. I knew Quinn and Ryan did some CrossFit, I think, beforehand. But then again, I mean, the first 2 weeks kind of kicked my ass anyways. And after that, your body sort of settles into a rhythm, and you just sort of, you get used to it.
So there really is no prep. There's not really a prep that you can do.
Not physically, I don't think.
It's just about doing it.
You just got to be mentally ready for it, about the day-to-day getting up and hiking. And if you can overcome that, then you got it in the bag. Because pretty much after day 5, I knew that I was going to be able to make it to the finish. Because day 5 was my worst day on the trail. So
I was like, oh, shit. Yeah, man. Day 4, I don't know. I might have to make a phone call back home. Day 5 is not getting much better. Matter of fact, it's gotten worse.
My first 3 days were in like almost constant rain. And then I had a day of sunshine on day 4, which is also when I got the trail name Gelati bestowed upon me from the old school Gelati cycling team cap that I was sporting. And then day 5 came, and it was freezing rain and sleet and gusting winds, and I was probably damn near hypothermic at that point. And I got some Trail Magic torture, which was, there was these guys who were doing a cycling charity event in northern Georgia, and they were having the cyclists ride the gaps. And the weather was so bad, they had maybe like 200 people signed up to run the race, and the weather was so bad they had maybe 1/10 of that, and they bought all these Subway lunch boxes, and so they had a bunch of turkey and ham Subway sandwiches, and then chips and cookies, and then beer and sodas. And I hike up, and I'm soaking wet, and they're just like, "You want a cold beer?" And I'm freezing my ass off, and I'm just like, any other time maybe, but right now, not so much. And I mean, I couldn't even really carry anything that they wanted to give me. Like, I had to eat it right there, because if I would have opened up my pack, everything inside would have got soaking wet.
Oh, okay.
And so they throw me a ham sandwich. I'm sitting on the back of their pickup truck, and it's got one of those lids on it that keep the back dry, and it's got the window on the back is tilted down, so it's dripping, and I'm sitting on the edge of the pickup truck, so this thing's popping me in the head with rain, and I'm eating this soggy sandwich because it's getting soaking wet. I'm shivering uncontrollably, drinking an ice-cold can of Coke.
That sounds amazing.
My stomach wasn't quite evened out at that point, so it was taking everything I had to keep this thing down. And I got finished with the sandwich because I needed the calories. I got half the bag of chips in me, and I couldn't even eat the cookie, the best part of the whole meal. Couldn't eat that. Damn. So I drink the rest of the Coke. I say, "Thanks, guys, but I seriously cannot eat anymore." They're like, "Well, please take it with you. Like, we got to get rid of this stuff." I was like, "You don't understand. If I open my pack, it's going to get soaking wet, and my night's going to be miserable." I was like, "But thank you so much." And they're like, "You got about a 45-minute hike up to Trey Mountain Shelter. That's where you got to go." I was like, "That's where I'm headed for the night." So I started hiking up there and get to the shelter. The shelter's packed with maybe 20 people, shoulder to shoulder. The floor is completely soaked. And I get in there. I strip down because I'm shivering my ass off. And luckily, some people sort of filtered out. Right. After I stood there for maybe about an hour and a half. And some people cleared out because they were going to try and make it to the next shelter. And the floor is completely soaked. The people who had already set up their camp or their sleeping bags and everything, they're sitting on the floor. Their sleeping bags are completely wet because everyone wasn't minding where they were stepping. No one took off their boots or anything. And I cleared it with everyone. I'm like, "Do you mind if I hang up my hammock on the inside?" Which you're not really supposed to, but I was just soaked to the bone. I just wanted to go to sleep. And luckily, everyone was gracious enough, and they said, "Yeah, do what you got to do." And so I slung up my hammock, and I was out for 14 hours. And the next day, the sun was shining, birds were chirping, and
everything was beautiful.
Everything was great.
I think it's a big misconception. I think a lot of people may not be aware of how many people are actually hiking the trail at one given time.
there's definitely waves that sort of go through. So March 1st is a big start day for a lot of people. Quinn and Ryan started February 28th, so a little bit ahead of the bubble, but they were still with a large group of people when they started. And then there's the party bubble that sort of, once they get to Damascus, they all basically group up together and head north as a group. But I heard some stories from some people that were stuck with the party bubble for a while. I just had a really awful time dealing with that.
Before we get to that stuff, you mentioned a few things that people may not be aware of. The trail name, and you said trail magic.
Which one do you want to know about first?
Well, you mentioned trail name first, so it's kind of like, who gives you a trail name? What if you don't? Let's say someone gives you a trail name. What if you don't like your trail name? Are you obligated to keep it? How does this whole? What is the etiquette? How do you approach something like that?
Well, trail names in general, I mean, there's two ways to go about it. There's people that have picked their trail names for themselves because they don't want anyone to give them their trail name. Otherwise, you sort of get given a trail name by your fellow hikers, so to speak. So, as far as being given a name and you don't like it, there's a funny story. I heard, I never met the girl, but her trail name was Golden Shower, and she was in the Smokies, and she was sleeping on one of the lower levels of the shelters in the Smokies, because the shelters in the Smokies are all uniform in size and shape, and they all have fireplaces and 2 levels to sleep on, as well as like a large floor space to where if overflow needed to go, there would be dirt space for people to sleep on the dirt. But anyways, she fell asleep on the bottom level, and the gentleman who was sleeping above her, he was piss-ass drunk. So he eventually pissed himself, and it drained through the cracks in the sleeping wood floor, and it got all over her, and her name was Golden Shower. So, I mean, you
name
can
to be proud of.
Right. Well, it's got a good story behind it. And
It
even
does.
people who never have met you will hear about you on the basis of a good story about how you got
Just
your trail
throughout the
name.
trail, so just know.
And yeah, I mean, there's always the people that want to fight their trail names, but if it's a really good one, it's going to stick no matter what.
You're not getting out of it.
Yeah,
Everybody's sticking with their name.
I also met people who were having doubts about the trail names that they picked for themselves, and they would change their own name throughout the trail as they went. So I knew a guy who had...
You can't do that. What kind of fucking shit is this? Changing my name. Can't just change your name.
My trail name wasn't anything super special, but it stuck and it was memorable and people liked it. So, I mean, I kept it just because, I don't know, it sounded good. It had a good ring to it. So,
And the magic. What the hell is a trail magic?
So, trail magic can be anything from a can of soda on the side of the road to someone inviting you into their house, which sounds a little odd, and probably you would never accept that from a stranger.
100% sounds odd.
But they'll invite you into your house. There was an example of some outstanding trail magic from this gentleman named Max Factor. I met him in the Shenandoahs, and I was crossing over this bridge, and I'm about to head back onto the other side where it reconnects back onto the trail, and as soon as I'm about to get back onto the trail, I see this truck off in my peripheral, and he's blazing down the road, like probably going 100 miles an hour.
Jesus.
And he pulls over, slams on his brakes, rolls down his window, and he goes, "You want something cold to drink?" And I'm like, what the hell? I'm sweating my ass off. I'm sweating my ass off. And of course, it's just like, well, yes, please.
Right.
Absolutely. So he hops out of his truck, pops open his cooler in his back, and he hands me an ice cold frozen Gatorade, literally solid. And
you can't even drink it.
Can't even drink it yet. But
Thanks,
it's like
asshole.
95 degrees outside. So give it like 10 minutes, and it's just a slushy. And he goes, by the way, that's not all. I'm looking for 6 other hikers for tonight. And then we're like, what are you talking about? And by we, I'm with this other guy, 5, who ended up also taking this invitation. And
this sounds homoerotic. I'm just going to say, this sounds...
nicest guy in the world.
I'm
nicest guy in the world.
6 dudes to come back to my house.
Not just
tonight.
dudes, just hikers. He's looking for 6
at least
hikers.
He said hikers. I was going to be worried.
But no, he's looking for some additional hikers to come to his ski resort because he had 2 timeshare condos there, and this guy's an open heart surgeon, and he takes a week out of his year on his vacation to go and cater to hikers, and he basically bends over backwards. He goes, "I'm going to."
Why does he do this? Why does he want to bend over backwards for hikers?
Well, the story with Max Factor, I mean, what he ended up telling us is over dinner, his son Max, I believe it was a freak like military helicopter accident, and he came out originally and hiked the trail in mourning for his son. And so that was his son was named Max, and that was the factor for why he was hiking the trail.
So that was like his tragedy for hiking the trail,
right?
Like some people, you said, get laid off. Some people probably get divorced or whatnot. His thing was his son died. He's gonna go find himself.
Right.
He's gonna walk the trail.
Right. And so, with his experience being out on the trail, he just wanted to keep giving back to the hiker culture.
Sure.
And he's actually planning on hiking it or giving a second attempt. He wasn't able to complete it his first time around. I think it was due to like physical just constraints. And so he's going to try it again with his wife next year. So it'd be nice to get out and maybe touch base with him.
I would think, if you've got like a knee problem or you've got hip problems or foot problems,
there was
like,
a woman
you
on
really take a toll on yourself. Like, I don't know if you could do it, if you could really complete it.
I mean, really, a lot of it is physical, but the vast majority is mental. Like, if you can mentally tough it out, you can definitely do it. There was a woman on the trail, Bionic Woman, I think was her trail name. She had a prosthetic leg and was doing it. Yeah. I don't know if she's still on trail or if she's finished already. But last time I checked, it was, I think she had left some stuff back at one of the hostels in Andover, New Hampshire, and was getting ready to come back after some sort of operation and finish up the trail after that.
Huh. Yeah, I guess you can. I guess it's only limited to what you can, muster up. But there would be a few things like, I guess, I'm thinking of it this way: if you got a prosthetic limb or whatnot, that limb is not going to take any more torture, right? Because it's not.
The limb itself won't.
It's not there.
But the pressure the
on
other limb is giving
on the other limb for sure. But if you got like a torn knee, or if you got like a bad ankle, like you're only going to aggravate it more. It's not like you have an amputated limb; it's gone. Like they cut the thing off. It's not coming back. But if you got something that's wrong, you could only potentially exacerbate a problem.
Well, yeah, I mean, you definitely don't want to push your body to a point where it's not repairable. I mean, if you get injured on the trail, you want to take the time out in order to make sure that that's okay.
Right.
I don't think anyone's heading out there with an already existing injury to try and push themselves to a point where it's miserable. The trail is not meant to be miserable, but it's not meant to be easy either. Otherwise, everyone would do it.
Right. Yeah. So the trail magic, you're saying, is just gifts. It's basically just a hippie name for gifts. Am I right?
Basically, random acts of kindness. And I mean, it doesn't even have to be...
Okay, so it doesn't have to be gifts or food. It can just be anything. Like,
it can be a hitch into town. It can be whatever that comes your way. I mean, a lot of times when you're out on the trail, you're not really, looking for things to come your way. They just sort of happen upon you.
And that's what's so magical about
exactly.
it. So yeah, you get your trail magic and you're good for the day. Like, how often do people come and do this? From what you were talking before, it sounded like fairly often.
early on in the trail, it seemed like it was happening very frequently, but as you got further and further north, it started to sort of wean out, and it didn't come by all that often, which made it that much more special when it did.
Right. So then, what would you go, like a week, 1 week, or a couple days?
At the start, it was probably, I don't know, every few days, every 4 to 6 days, and then even through Virginia and somewhat in Pennsylvania, there was some really good trail magic, especially from this couple. My girlfriend, Emily, came out and hiked a section of the trail with me for a week and a half, and her first day when she got into town, I had met this couple, Ralph and Kathy.
Good old Ralphie.
Ralph
Ralphie
and Kathy. Roger and Kathy. That's what it was. But no, they were phenomenal. I was sitting outside of a Walmart waiting for my hiking buddy at the time, TNT. He's from Germany, from Buchstadt, Germany. Buchstadt. If you said it with an American accent, it'd be Berg Stargard. But I was waiting for him to finish up shopping at Walmart, and I was looking on my phone to see how far away the day's in, which is where I was going to be meeting Emily at. It was about 2 miles away, and really 2 miles isn't that far when you've been hiking multiple hundreds of miles, but when you're in town, you sort of want to take it a little bit easier, and so we were going to look for a hitch, and I was on the phone with Emily, and she was on her way into town, and I just said, we're just looking for a ride to get over to the Days Inn, and sure enough, Roger and Kathy walked by us, and they said, "Oh, you need a ride?" And just these people, I had no clue
They're just
who
like
they were.
Nice people.
Just
and
really
they're just
nice
all
people.
over the place down there, it seems
And
like.
yeah, they gave TNT a place to stay for 2 nights at their house, their old school farmhouse. Roger hadn't been back to their house in 30 years.
Wow.
They were traveling with the Navy, and Kathy would come home from time to time to check on the property and the tenants, and he hadn't seen the house in 30 years, and they invited us over for breakfast and coffee and donuts, and then they gave us a tour of the town and their house, and treated us to pizza, and we got to see
all the stops.
Yeah,
and they just do this because there's really no other reason.
We were the first people that they have done it to, and could never have expected it.
Is it husband and wife?
Husband and wife, and they had a son.
They were looking for a threesome, dude.
Right.
That's exactly what they were looking for. This got passed around a couple times. We're gonna pick up one of these hikers one of these days. Tonight's the night you promised, honey.
It's been 30 years.
It's been 30 fucking years we've been talking about this, and you know what? It's my 30th birthday. It's gonna happen. So
I bet he wishes he was 30 again. I think he's close to probably 60.
Oh.
But he's also thinking about doing the
been.
trail next year. He's planning on doing a southbound hike next year.
So yeah, it's just starting the opposite direction. You
Right.
kind of got to time it out right for the weather, right? You gotta.
Well, yeah, most southbounders I think start in late May or early June, and I mean it'll be good for next year because I'm sure with the movie that's come out, the Walk in the Woods movie based on Bill Bryson's book,
Right.
Walk in the Woods.
Who's in that?
Could it be Nick Nolte and Robert Redford?
Nick Nolte and Robert Redford. Why the fuck are these old dudes walking in the woods? But
who knows? But Bill Bryson never actually finished the whole trail. I think he did a decent section of it. I think it was a few 100 miles. But
and who are they? I don't know. I don't follow. Who's Bill Bryce?
Bill Bryson's I think he's an adventure author.
Okay.
But anywho, the movie came out, and I don't know how well it's been doing in the theaters, but I'm sure it's going to bring a good crowd to the trail next year.
A walk in the woods.
We even had a record, I think, number of hikers this year, and with the movie coming out and like the publicity that Scott Jurek has brought out about it, I'm wondering if next year it's almost going to be a clusterfuck of a situation with the amount of people that are going to be out there. But I don't know.
We've got the reviews right here, actually. There's a slight. Let's see, what is it? What are they saying about this walk in the woods business? There's light diversion, but little substance in this tale of two grumpy old men making a predictable hash of their effort to hike the Appalachian Trail. This guy doesn't seem like he's a big fan right now from Daily Variety, Mr. Dennis Harvey. Another guy says, a walk in the woods is a low-impact amble through the hill, dale, and cinematic nostalgia. The trail doesn't offer much in the way of drama other than a couple of huge bears, says the Washington Post.
Oh, that's funny because in the trailer, I actually saw the trailer, and there was grizzly bears in that scene.
That was it. That was the scene.
And,
like, you know how those movies go where you've got, they just show the most exciting parts in the preview. That's it. Like, once you're done with that part, and once you see that part in the theaters, it's like, all right, I can go home. That was
There's
it.
the whole thing.
That was basically everything that they want to show me. So yeah, there you go. There's your bear part. And
but it's funny because I mean there are no grizzly bears on the East Coast. It's all black bears.
These fucking liars.
Which are probably about a third the size.
Liars. Walk in the woods. So you gonna go see it?
Probably not.
I know.
If
you
I
already
do,
did the walk in the
if
woods.
I do,
what the hell
it'll
would you wanna
probably be on
watch it again
Netflix
for?
or something. It's a renter, not a
renter,
movie.
definitely not a go see. So you said your girlfriend Emily met up with you, and she definitely did not have a easy time.
No, but she got one of the best sections of the whole trail as far as easiness goes. She got a lot of flat farmland in early Pennsylvania.
Yeah, but does she have knee? What was her main issue with?
Well,
difficulty?
I mean, after a few days, she started developing like some knee pain. So we took a 0 day for that, and then we just took it easier. We started doing less miles, and then.
So I'm saying that knee pain is no joke.
At the start, we were hiking with TNT, but then after we got to Boiling Springs, we took a 0 in Boiling Springs, and TNT got ahead of me. So at that point, it really wasn't that big of a deal. So Emily and I just sort of hiked our own hike.
Own thing, yeah.
And then when Emily got finished with her section, I dropped her off with her parents, and then met up with them like a day later.
Oh, they kind of hung out there a little bit.
Yeah, I hung out with them for a little bit, and they were gracious enough to slack pack me my one slack pack I did on the trail.
Which is what?
Which is where you take basically the bare necessities of your pack, which maybe like a first aid kit and some snacks for the day, your water bottle and water filter, and I don't know, maybe a pocket knife or something just in case. But it's just it's the bare minimum.
Bare bones.
And I did 37 miles that day.
So you're saying they just carry all your stuff? Is that what they're saying?
No, they drove me to the point of where I would have my stuff, like the rest of my gear, and
gotcha.
Then they drove me back to where I started, and which was like a 30-mile road road drive back to Port Clinton, which is where I left from, and then they were heading back to Michigan that day. So it was good. Yeah, I covered a lot of ground. It was 30 miles to like the checkpoint where I left my gear and then picked that back up and went over, I think it was Knife Blade or Knife Edge.
Okay.
And that was pretty good.
So at the beginning, you had you kind of bought all this food that you were going to have shipped to you and that kind of thing. Now doing it, would you still have to do that? Would you look back and say that was a good idea, or do I only really need 1-2 shipments because there is all these people giving you food on the trail? You know that you don't have to carry around and.
Well, the thing is, I mean, you never know when it's coming with like the trail magic stuff. You never know.
You got to rely on it
when it's going to happen.
Set a schedule.
If you do that, you could starve out there.
Right.
I mean, if you count on trail magic. I mean, there was a couple days where I literally ran out of food, but I was within maybe 10 miles of a town, so I knew I was going to get there. But I mean, that's dangerous business if you're going to just try and solely rely on trail magic.
Well, I didn't know if maybe you stocked food to be shipped out. Basically, everybody has to do that, right? Or do you just hike? Do some people just hike and then decide, hey, I need to go get more supplies? Then you get more supplies, or does pretty much everybody have stuff shipped to checkpoints or previously shipped to checkpoints?
A lot of people have the stuff shipped to checkpoints, especially if you have dietary restrictions. If you're a vegan,
I'd be fucked up there.
There were 2 or 3 vegans that I hiked with for a short time. I called them the Vegan Super Troop. Names are Cheyenne, Stevie, and Colton. They're from Oklahoma.
They sound like vegans. Did they tell you that they were vegans?
Yeah.
Almost immediately?
Not immediately, but, as you get to know them, they open up about being vegan.
Of course they do.
Because, there's some people, especially like people who are doing trail magic, they're trying to offer you food. And if it's
I'm a vegan, I can't partake in your magic. I'm sorry.
But no, extremely nice people. But they had food shipped to them, I think, at every city that they had to come into town. But they had everything pre-planned right from the get-go, where exactly everything we needed to go, which kind of sucked when the shipments got screwed up, because there were several times where Colton didn't get his package delivered to him.
Colton, that's such a vegan name.
Yeah.
You never hear that anywhere else.
But no, that's rough. And then you have to sort of make do with what's in the grocery store. And, which, if you're not vegan, that's pretty easy going.
If you don't have
there's not a lot of Trader Joe's or...
You walk by McDonald's, load up.
There was a guy who was doing some trail magic with his girlfriend, Scout and Gadget. They had actually one of the first huge spreads of food that I had gotten to partake upon. And they were telling us about some of their weird resupplies that they had done the year before when they hiked the trail. And I think it was Scout, the girl, she did a candy resupply. Mm-hmm. She went into a gas station and only bought candy until she had to get to the next town. So it probably lasted her a couple of days, and she said she was sick to her stomach.
I'm telling you, you could go to McDonald's and get 20 McDoubles last year.
That's what Gadget did. He did a McDonald's resupply. Said it wasn't the best idea either.
Hell no. Hiking all that way with that lead shit sitting in your stomach? My God. You'd have the shits for days if you were living on a steady diet of McDoubles every day.
A steady diet of government cheese.
Yeah, Morgan Spurlock, who did the
Supersize Me.
Supersize Me. Yeah. Supersize Me while walking around all day. I wonder what that would... He's going to have to do one like that. That'd be pretty kooky. So, yeah. How do you... Okay. You started this trail. You're dating your girlfriend for I don't know how long. How do you break this news? Like, I'm going away for a few months. I'm hiking this trail. Like, most people, they'd be like, dude, I'm breaking up with you. Like, you're not disappearing for 4 months, like, and going on some trail. How do you deal with that part of it?
Well, it really wasn't like a newsflash. I'm going on the trail. It was something I was actually talking to her about for several years. Like, it was on my things to do, and I had the opportunity presented to me to where I could basically go and do the trail, and then I told her this is something I really wanted to do. Something I wanted to do, so...
Well, your company was supportive of it, too, that you worked for. Right. So that helps, too.
I graduated college. I had a second internship with this company. They gave me a full-time offer when I was leaving.
Right.
Yeah, so I have something to come back to, which I'll be going back there in about a week. And then, they wished me well. They gave me a gift card to REI to help with some expenses. Of the gear and expenses, which really came in handy.
Yeah, that's pretty
my
good. Most bosses would be like, fuck you. What do you mean you're going away for 4 months? Get the fuck out of here.
Well, my internship was ending. So, I had the choice to either come back or not. So I was going to be gone
Timing
either way.
Is definitely...
But I did tell them, and some people say this is a mistake, but I told them that I was going to be doing the trail before my first internship in my initial interview, and I laid that on the table. And so I don't know if they took that as this guy's got cojones. He's going to try and conquer something that he's been wanting to do for a long time.
Right.
And I don't know what they saw, but they decided to take me on as their first intern and then brought me back for a second one. So
if it
it
works,
works for me.
It's funny because people that don't know, like, our dad's kind of a unique guy. And
You could say that. You could say.
He was getting on Joe's case about, I think when you first went for that interview.
Oh, about the beard?
You had a beard, and he's real old school. He's like, better shave that beard. Nobody's going to hire you with no beard.
Right?
And then, of course, fucking beard and all, get the job. And, I mean, there's not really much you could say. Basically, like, I got a job with his wacky-ass beard. And, but all these new companies, see, if you've been out of the workforce for a little while, it's not as strict, really, like, as people used to think it was. Like, back in the day, like, man, you wouldn't think, like, somebody would be rocking, like, a corporate job with, like, a sleeve of tattoos. But
and gauges in
their ears and crazy shit. But now, yeah, it's like you can't go really into an office anywhere without seeing that. Like, you'd be hard-pressed to go in to look for a job and not see somebody with a bunch of tattoos or crazy gauge piercings. Because I think people are getting the idea that it really doesn't matter. Like, that's not really what's going to make someone a good worker or not a good worker. But right now, like, the big thing is beards. Like, you can't go anywhere without seeing something about a beard. Like, everybody wants to have an epic, I've got this epic beard, bro.
Right?
It's like somehow that became, with, like, in the last 2 years, I would say, there's been, like, this big push for beards. Like, people are all about them. Like, there's all these weird, like, grooming...
Beard competitions?
Yeah, beard competitions. There's, like, these grooming, like, I guess, like, you call them, like, boutiques for men. Like, these, like, what's the one now? We're in the Detroit area, but the Detroit Grooming Company is, like, I always see them on, like, Instagram and ads, but there's, like, all these people who are, like, all about having crazy big beards. And there are, like, ads everywhere, like, real men got beards. Real men got beards. This dude's got a beard. He's got tattoos. He's fucking crazy. Everybody loves him. It's amazing. But yeah, it's like a big push. So people that worked old school jobs, man, they don't really, I don't know, maybe they just don't really know what it's like. But I don't think employers really give a shit. Like, if you're dressed okay too, like, I think if you come in looking crazy and you got a beard and crazy tattoos, but you're dressed in like a nice suit or something, that's kind of like really all they care about. Obviously, you can't be rolling into the office in like pajamas,
like you used to do, right?
That's exactly what I used to do. I used to come in looking like shit. I'm surprised anybody ever kept me. So bad. So back to what we were talking about. So everybody's kind of excited about you going. Now, a lot of dudes would have problems with this. You're on the trail. The old girl's back at home. Does the mind start to wander? Like, do you think, man, like, I don't know, like maybe they're doing some shit behind my back now. You know what I mean?
No,
like people's heads get to, you hear about people who go on like reality shows. You hear about people who like disappear for a little while, and they have to take these long hiatuses again or away from their family, girlfriends, whatever the case is, and they can't do it because they start like losing their shit. They're always thinking somebody's cheating on them. They're always thinking like. No. You know what I mean?
There's some people, yes, that probably happened to. And I knew a lot of people that, like, were just coming out of relationships that ended pretty badly, or they just figured that it wasn't going to last the 4 months. And, I mean, Emily and I had gone through, long-distance relationships while I was at school, when I was at Michigan State.
Yeah, it was like an hour away. So,
which, really isn't long distance, but it's a ways to drive to go and see somebody,
right?
But we went through that, and we just sort of figured it was sort of another, I guess, test for the relationship,
right.
And I don't think anyone had any doubts about what either one was doing. as far as cheating goes, because I think we both
I-
trust each other
yeah.
quite a bit.
You know, I'm just saying, guys especially, and maybe some chicks too, be there alone at night in the woods, you haven't seen anybody for fucking 4 days. There's just a lot of crazy shit that goes through people's heads. Just wondering if that was an issue. But I can imagine there's probably a lot of single people, and you're probably right. Like, I think when a lot of people would start out on something like that, the first thing they'd be is like, well, is this relationship really gonna, maybe I better break it off before I go on this thing, because...
But it's funny. I mean, a lot of people on the trail, I mean, I heard just via other people that a lot of people that are come out there single, they want to be single. Like, they came out there to be by themselves.
To be alone.
And there were some there was quite a few girls out on the trail. Not nearly as many men, or not nearly as many men, if I can even say that right. But there was far more men on the trail. But there were single women on the trail, and guys would go up to them and try and be flirtatious with them, and they put them in their place. They just be like, "No, I'm out here. Huh? I'm out here for me, not to get with somebody."
Exactly, because chicks are like that. Chicks are focused. They're out there to accomplish a goal. Dudes are out there trying to bang chicks alone in the woods.
But it's funny. I mean, the guys who are trying to be pervy and creepy, those are the guys that get left behind in the dust, and they end up hiking the whole trail by themselves, and a lot of them leave. I mean, they don't stay the whole time because no one wants to hike with them.
Yeah, because they're probably not. Nobody wants to hike with a creepo. That you
No.
gotta always be looking over your shoulder. Right. Like, this guy's got his GHB out. He's messing with my water bottle.
They're very few and far between. They're not all over the place, but they do exist. I mean,
absolutely,
like everywhere.
They do. Well, you mentioned about a lot of these party people that go out there, and then in previous conversations that we had, you were saying that a lot of these people are not actually completing the trail, but it's more of just like, I don't know, kind of like I mean, they are doing part of it. They're doing part of the trail, but they're not really doing the full trail. There's a lot of people that claim to do the full trail, but they really haven't done the full trail. It's kind of like...
I mean, again, the trail is on the honor system. So pretty much the people who have been hiking the trail and have hiked the whole trail and have looked at the logbooks where people can write whatever's on their mind into the logbook, a lot of people check in, or they just put their initials down or something. And, I mean, everyone sort of eventually starts to catch on with who's actually doing the trail and who's not.
Right.
And, I mean, I'm sure there was a lot of people in that crowd that were just sort of hopping around, yellow blazing or quote-unquote hitchhiking large sections of the trail.
Just hopping in there.
Just to try and get to other desirable sections. Yeah, I mean, odds are they're probably going to say they did the whole thing. But, I mean, no one's going to be there to be like, no, you didn't. I mean,
yeah,
they're going to go back
home.
It's
the Appalachian Trail. So, I mean, you're certainly going to get more people than, like, it's real hard to bullshit climbing Mount Everest. Like, you really can't bullshit climbing Mount Everest. But you can go on the trail and take some pictures of the trail and kind of be like, yeah, I did this trail. And then really no one can really dispute you.
Right.
You know?
So, I mean, it just comes down to, I guess, your moral code, so to speak, and what you're willing to...
moral code. They're just
like,
out there.
I mean, yeah, the trail's meant to be out there to have a good time, but I mean, everyone's out there for a different reason. Some people are out there to party. Some people are out there to find somebody. Some people are out there to find themselves. I mean, it just comes down to, I don't know, what you're looking to get out of the experience.
No, definitely, for sure. So, the people they're kind of partying, I'm assuming they all party together.
A lot of them, yeah.
So you get,
again,
like,
I didn't really hang around them that much. But I mean, in Damascus, Virginia, which is one of like the big trail towns on the entire trail, and that's where Trail Days was, which is like this big sort of like festival for hikers, and they got a bunch of gear like techie guys there with all of their tents and stuff that they want to show and stuff for next year. And They have music and a ton of stuff. Like, there's a lot of stuff to do in town. But then I didn't stay there, but there's Tent City, which is basically where a lot of hikers can spend the night and or spend the weekend rather. And like, there's 2 sections I heard. I never went into Tent City, but
yeah, I'd avoid Tent City.
But there's like the party side, and then there's like the people who actually want to get to sleep. But I spent the night at the place is what it was called, and it was just this hostel. It was asking for donations, and so staying there, it was much quieter, but you could still hear the shenanigans that were going in Tent City. So
the people of Tent City, when they speak, everybody can hear them.
So yeah, who knows what was going on there? I mean, you could probably guess. There's probably some drugs, some alcohol.
Oh, for sure.
But I mean,
it's hippie town.
It's hippie town.
Everybody's getting fucked up in Tent City. That's 90% of what they're doing on the Appalachian Trail.
Some people, not everyone.
Not everyone. Oh, clearly not everybody. But I think a lot of the people that go in there with the kind of hippie mentality of, you know, obviously
free love.
They might
do what you want.
They might do some crazy shit. More power to them. God bless them for that. So would you do it again? Would you recommend people do it again? Or
I think that the trail was extremely beneficial for me. I don't know if it's beneficial for everyone, but I think everyone should sort of go out and tackle something that they've been wanting to do. I mean, that could be any number of things, but it's just sort of what gives you a sense of satisfaction and completion. For me, I mean, it was more of a challenge aspect from the get-go. It was just, could you do this? You think you can, but can you actually put yourself
Were you
through
pretty
that?
sure, though? Like, when you started, you kind of knew, like, yeah, I'm definitely going to be able to do this trail. Like, you know,
I mean, I never had a point
with it.
I never had a point that I was questioning whether or not I could finish it. Because, I mean, yeah, it gets harder as you go north. I mean, you have your sort of initial growth stage in Georgia where you have to sort of man up, so to speak, and hit the trail and deal with it.
Yeah.
Because I had never done any hiking nearly as strenuous as that, and you just sort of adapt to it, and the whole way your body's just sort of adapting.
Is that the more hilly? Like, what's the more difficult? Like, just more hilly terrain, more the heat.
Well, I mean, it's not always hilly. I mean, Pennsylvania, a lot of people complain about Pennsylvania rocks, and I didn't really think Pennsylvania was that bad. Like, yeah, there are rocks, but it's part of the trail.
Right.
I mean, there's massive boulders that you got to climb across, and that's just part of it. I mean, yeah, it slows you down, but I mean, sometimes you got to slow down.
You got to slow down. So what was the hardest part, would you say, was your hardest section?
The hardest climb, I guess, for me was Mount Moosilauke, which is sort of like your initiation to the Whites in New Hampshire.
Okay.
And climbing up that, it was at the close to the end of the day. I started climbing Moosilauke when it was like 2:30 in the afternoon, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And it's basically, what is it?
It's like 4,800 feet.
Like 4,800 feet in, so what's that, like a mile straight up? It's
yeah.
damn near vertical.
Oh,
and
shit.
Coming up that, it
Looking
was
at
just
these pictures of it.
good. A lot of water sources, though. If you're planning on hiking it, make sure you bring like a water filter, and you can drink water all the way up. But it was definitely exhausting, especially since I had done some climbs earlier on in the day, but nothing as severe as that, and that just took so much energy out of me. But from the top, I mean, the view was spectacular. I sat up there all by myself. No one else was up there. I got there at 6 o'clock in the afternoon.
And I just had the whole mountain.
I had the whole mountain to myself, and it was absolutely spectacular. So I stayed there for about an hour and just sort of soaked it all in. And
the Whites.
The White Mountains.
And they're white. I'm assuming snow-capped up there.
No, there's no snow. I don't actually know why they're called the Whites. Maybe in the winter they're snow-capped.
Is that do you know what elevation? What do you have to be at before it starts becoming snow capped?
I think it's definitely above 5,000.
Is there anything like that on the East Coast that you know of, or is it pretty much a West Coast thing?
I think it's more West Coast. Those mountains are newer and a lot taller. The Appalachian Mountains are pretty old.
Bitch mountains, small ones.
I'm sure they used to be grandiose, but a lot of weathering and erosion has brought them down.
Yeah, they'll definitely bring them down. So you wouldn't do it again, would you?
The Appalachian
Is there no
Trail?
point? Like, once you do it, is there really no point in doing it again? Unless you didn't complete it, right?
I guess. I mean, it really depends on what you want to do. I mean, personally, I
wouldn't
probably
wanna
would
do it
not
again.
hike the Appalachian Trail again.
I would think it would be dumb to. I would say,
I think
I already did this trail. I'm not spending 4 months of my life again to do this a second time.
For me, I got what I wanted out of it, and to do it again, I almost feel like it would maybe take away from the first time. However, there's people like Baltimore Jack, who's like a trail legend. He's pretty overweight. He's a big guy, but he travels along the trail as the hikers do, and he stops at specific trail towns along the way and sort of hangs out and waits for them to come by.
What is this guy's living? What does he do?
I have no clue. I have no clue.
Lives the trail.
Lives the trail, but he's hiked it 9 times when he was younger, and no, he was a super cool guy. I mean, he gave me a beer my 3rd night when I was staying at Neil Gap. And
oh, you're not fucking kidding. He's all over Google.
Super nice guy.
Apparently everybody knows him but me. Fuck.
I mean, there's Baltimore Jack, there's Miss Janet are like the 2, I think, main
he's not a small guy.
Trail
Baltimore
legends.
He's a hefty gentleman.
He's got a bunch of AT medallions around his neck.
Yeah, he's got a shit ton of them. This picture, he looks like Jerry Garcia. He's got an orange vest on, like a construction worker. So was there anybody that you met on the trail that was completely creepy? You're like, I gotta get the fuck away from this nut job.
I mean, that I thought was completely creepy. I mean, there were some people that
you kind of like put you on edge, where you're like, I don't know about this guy. Like, he's just a little fucking weird. He's talking some crazy shit when we're walking next to each other.
There was probably only one guy who kind of freaked me out a little bit, but I wasn't in his company ever. It was in his passing by. I don't know if he has much of a story, but I mean, where was it? It was in Vermont. I was coming out of Manchester Center, and I got dropped back off at the trailhead, and I'm walking in this parking lot to get back onto the trail, and I see this massive plume of smoke coming out of the woods, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like, it looked like a damn forest fire was going on. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And I'm walking, and I see this this ranger car. Some ranger had just pulled up, like he just pulled in, and I'm walking in, and I see this guy sitting at this initial campsite right as you walk in. I'm like, what the fuck? He's got this roaring fire going, and it's 11 o'clock.
On it.
It's 11 o'clock in the morning, and he's got this raging fire going. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? And just trying to be nice, not trying to stir up anything. I'm just like, hey, how's it going? Nothing. Doesn't say a damn thing. And he sort of turns over. He mumbles something at me as I pass by, and he goes, "You're not gonna fucking say hi to me? What the fuck, rude ass?" And I'm like, "What?" And I'm just like,
"Sir,
dude.
with an intro like that, that's why people are not saying hi to you."
Right. But I mean, I wasn't about to get in with this guy.
You weren't gonna
get into it.
You weren't gonna throw down.
Right.
With them?
I wasn't gonna Bobby Flam. No. But I kept walking, but I was talking with some other people, and they were talking about he was trying to charge a troll toll.
Troll toll.
Because there was a bridge that connected. He goes, you gotta pay $1 to cross my bridge. He's trying to claim ownership on part of the trail, and he's drunk off his ass. And I guess
he may have been an actual troll.
Maybe, but I guess he was in and out of jail throughout his hike on the trail. And whenever
Jesus fucking
he would get dropped off at a hospital for being God knows, like he needed medicine or
nuts?
something, and they'd send him back out on the trail from the hospital,
Oh,
like
man.
because they would just dump him off on the trail.
They give zero fucks at those hospitals.
That
They say get back on the
beats
trail.
me.
We don't.
And he would spend the
You're
night.
not our problem anymore. Get through the end of our town, and that's all we need to do. Like fucking, what was I watching the other night? Rambo, the first Rambo. That's exactly or First Blood they called it. That's what they made him do. The sheriff picked him up. He didn't like the cut of his jib. You come into my town, you military-looking guy. We don't like you. You came here with a little knapsack on. Get in the back of my squad car. I'm going to drive you to the edge of town.
Right.
And then he decides he's going to go back into town, which pisses off the sheriff something awful. And Rambo ensues. That's how you get Rambo. It's crazy shit like that. These guys, they're basically... You probably have a lot of crazy people on the trail who have watched Rambo one too many times. And
Probably a very small fraction.
A small
Very
fraction, but
small
nonetheless,
fraction.
I guarantee that they're there. I promise. Okay, so you wouldn't do the trail again, but you had two people that started before you that you knew, and they finished up. Were they kind of the same way? They were just like, we need to bolt through this thing. Pretty good hikers, or are they?
Yeah,
more...
I mean, we finished in basically the same amount of time. I think they finished maybe a day or two ahead of me as far as like the actual time span
Sure.
was concerned, because I wasn't in a race. It was never a race to begin with, but it's just sort of what you
It's
feel
almost
comfortable
impossible to make it a race. Like,
Right.
how do you really make it?
unless you're
know?
going for the world record, unless you're Scott Jurek. I mean,
Yeah, but unless you're gonna beat that record and you think you
It's
have
not
the
really-
potential to, like, what are you gonna do? Like, no one knows the guy that's like second place, third, fourth, and fifth place. Like,
right.
nobody's like, who the fuck is that? Like, unless you're gonna beat the main guy, pretty much there's 0 point in racing.
Yeah, I mean, there's everyone who wants to set their own personal goals as far as, like, I don't know why you would want to finish in 100 days or less. I mean, that's to the point where you're really pushing your body to its limit, especially if you're not an elite athlete.
Right.
You're really pushing yourself.
I definitely be
And,
pushing myself.
I mean,
I'm not an elite athlete.
I thought I was hitting a good pace for me, and that's really all I was concerned with.
So with anything, now that you've done it, for other people that are going to do it, what kind of advice would you say? What would you do different if you could do anything different?
Differently,
To make it, that would make it easier, better.
I would probably carry less stuff. I mean, if I could have afforded it, I would have had lighter equipment. I would have gone ultralight if I had the option to.
And your pack weighed how much?
My pack was around 36 pounds when it was full of food, and my food situation was typically 15 pounds would last me around 4 days. So 15 pounds of food is what I normally carried. But I don't know. I could have had a lighter pack. I could have had everything counts. So I could have had lighter everything, but I couldn't afford to do that. That was the problem.
How much is this? Would you say is an ultralight pack compared to how much yours was?
Typically, ultralighters are usually sub 20 pounds full.
So pretty much like your food and then some really light clothes. That's it.
No, usually it's just the clothes that you're wearing. I mean, you don't count that, the clothes that you're wearing.
You don't really pack clothes. You just
No, you just basically have one pair of clothes that you wear, and then
basically wreck the fuck out of.
Basically, or you just sleep in your sleeping bag naked. I don't know. Some people do that. But then, I mean, you can have. I didn't have a down sleeping bag. I had a synthetic sleeping bag, which weighs quite a bit more. My sleeping bag was like 3 pounds. Other people had sleeping bags that were a pound, which, I mean, it all adds up. So,
right.
And then there's people who are like the ounce counters, but if you're an ultralight packer, you have to be an ounce counter, where every single ounce you're trying to get as light as possible. So,
no, those guys. Is there any reason why someone would be that incredibly picky?
there's people who are like obsessed about it, and they want the lightest of everything. And if they find a new piece of gear that's just a gram or two lighter, they'll do it. They'll they'll buy it and they'll send their other stuff up on Amazon. But I didn't get that involved with my research. Plus, I didn't have the money to do that. But it would have been nice. But that's for the next trip. I'll focus on that. But
what is the next trip?
Well, as far as like super long distance backpacking, it's not for several years. It's off in the distant future.
You gotta work first.
Gotta work first. Gotta work. Gotta save up a little money. Gotta get the
bank account up to where it needs to be.
Gotta pay off the school debt I got and have that done with. But no, a lot of people from here, after doing the AT, they'll go and do the Pacific Crest Trail out in California. Or it starts in California, like at the base towards Mexico. So you start at the border there, and then you work your way up to the border of Canada. And I think that one's like 2,600 miles.
That one's a little longer.
But the other two, the three trails that make up the Triple Crown trails are longer than the AT. So
is that the goal, Triple Crown?
It'd be nice to do Triple Crown.
That is, if you're a hiking guy. I'm surprised. Once you're done, do you think like, you know what? I'm not really a trail person. I did it. I finished it.
I don't know if you can. I mean, there was a guy I met in Damascus who was there for trail days, and he had hiked the year before. He went by the name of Spider-Man. But I asked him if he would ever consider doing another trail or anything like that. He said no. The AT was my thing, and that was it. It was the thing I wanted to do, and I don't really want to do another long distance hike. He sort of knocked it out with that one. And I get it. There's other stuff you want to do. Like I rock climb. I do various other activities. And yeah, doing a long distance hike eats up a lot of your time. So there's a lot of other things.
A lot of fucking time.
There's a lot of other things you could do with that time. And if you are going to be Triple Crown, and if you stuck with the average, you'd be out for like a year and a half. Just hiking. A year and a half of your life is spent hiking.
True, but if that's your cup of tea, I guess that's not so bad. But if you get into wanting to do other stuff, you got other interests. To me, it seems like once you did it, you'd be like, well, I think I've had enough walking. Like maybe I try to do something else.
Right, but the other two trails, I mean, it's vastly different scenery.
Well, that's the other thing. You certainly would get a lot more vantage points. A lot new stuff that you're going to see. The trail is probably a little more tricky, has its own different things about it that makes it more difficult.
Well, yeah, each trail has its own sort of difficulties. The AT is considered by people who have done all three to be the most difficult physically.
Oh, okay.
Whereas the Pacific Crest Trail is graded for pack animals. It was graded for pack animals. So you're not really going to have a hard time hiking that trail. It's just longer.
Right.
But your average miles per day are going to be far higher hiking that trail than the AT.
Right.
The Continental Divide Trail, which runs from New Mexico to the Canadian border, so basically through the heart of America.
The heart of America.
The heart of America.
Heart of America.
That one, I mean, it's only 70% actually complete. The rest of it is left to compass and a map for you to navigate your way.
That's one thing. That's I didn't even think about that. So how did you navigate the trail? Did you use just GPS or?
I had a GPS.
Or is there like a clear trail that you can see?
The trail is definitely clear. It's all white blazed, so trees around 50 to 100 meters away from each other all have a white rectangle tick mark on them.
All of them?
Not all the trees.
Oh, I was gonna say,
but
the entire fuck went out there.
The
and
entire
all those?
trail has tick marks the entire way, so all you do is follow the white blazes. That's all you're looking for.
White blaze. Just. So you think the Pacific Rim is your next one?
No,
I'm
thinking the CDT as the next one, just because it's considered a logistic nightmare, because trying to get the like drop boxes, your food shipments and stuff like that is
Little
quite
tougher.
difficult. But then the PCT is considered pretty easy by comparison. So I'm thinking about saving that one as dessert and
Dessert at the end,
having
my
a
friend.
little bit of fun with the PCT at the end. But I'm sure each are extremely beautiful. So
Set a couple years on that one.
couple of years at least.
In the meantime,
If not-
nothing. No adventure.
I have some things planned. Like, I mean, you have to sort of stay busy after something like this, otherwise you're gonna drive yourself nuts. Like, that was one of the main things I was concerned with. Not so much hiking the trail, but what happens after the trail's over.
After the trail,
'Cause I don't wanna
it's
have-
like PTSD.
Right.
You start to
There's-
fucking lose it.
there's
He's
a lot of
seeing
people that
trails in his
suffer
fucking
from-
sleep.
There's a lot of people that suffer from like after trail depression and
Oh,
and
lordy.
they have weight gain because they just stopped doing stuff and they're still eating
Lordy,
a crazy
lordy.
amount of food. And
Yeah.
but I mean, for me, I've been trying to get swimming as something I do regularly because I would like to do an Ironman in around 2 years as like my 25th birthday
That's
present.
pretty cool.
I'm planning on doing a marathon in Toronto in May, which was funny because me and my buddy Nick were gonna do that marathon to qualify for Boston. But
Right.
the funny thing is, the Boston Marathon's in April, so it's like you have to wait a whole year in
Yeah,
order
it's
to
going to be
run
a
the
lot
Boston.
of... that is a long time to train. Can keep up the training
Just keep
pace
it
for
up.
a year.
But other than that, I mean, it'd be fun to do the Great Lakes Relay again. I did the first time I did that was in 2010 with some cross country buddies and did that. It was a blast. We had Tobin, one of my coaches, and then who else do we have? Dave Atkins, and we just had a blast. It's a weekend event where you run from one side of Michigan to the other in just a weekend, and you just probably run 2 relays a day. Like each person has to run around 2 legs per day, and throughout the weekend you probably run around 30 plus miles.
Yeah. Well, now, where do people find out about these things?
No, what do you mean?
Like all these relays and races.
I mean,
is
it's
there a
all-
place like you really can go, or is like
It's all online. I mean, what I heard it from people by word of mouth. I didn't really delve into it too much. I did a few
you
of
didn't
those.
Join the Facebook fan page.
No, I did a few of like the
Yeah.
novelty races a few years ago, like the Iron Warrior Dash and Warrior Dash, and what's the other one? Tough Mudder.
So people at those will probably have a little more information then.
Probably.
So what you mentioned something about people getting post-trail depression. What would cause you to have post-trail depression? Just the fact that you got to get back into the grind again. You got to get back to doing a job. You got to get back to just
Maybe
not being out all the time.
I don't know. I think it's different for each person, but I mean, depending on what you're coming back to, that might trigger it. I mean,
Yeah,
some
if you're
people
coming back to a fucking terrible life. Then,
Right.
Yeah,
Like,
you certainly.
if you're not a desk person, a desk person that likes working at a desk 9 to 5, and
I love an air-conditioned desk 9 to 5. It's one of my favorite things.
but some people, it's like they spent the past 4 to 7 months outside, and they got to see something different every day, and
Right.
interact with new people every single day, meet different people, get their stories. I mean, it's interesting that you get to do that from day to day.
True. Get the constant stimulation. You know, there's a lot of people when they saw that fucking Avatar movie in 3D, they were saying people got depression from that. Like,
For what?
Because from what they were saying, I'm trying to remember where the hell I heard it from, but I remember it was on like legitimate news sources, and they were saying like people were thinking it was so beautiful that when they had to go home, it was like the worst thing in the world.
It's
It was,
not real.
I know they wanted to stay and live in Avatar world. So
With Jake Sully,
with Jake Sully and the blue people. So I don't know. I think, man, if you're susceptible to that kind of thing, though, I could see that would definitely be a problem for people. Like, you're out and about, you're active every day. You know, you're walking 15, plus miles a day. You're running into new people all the time. People are being super nice to you. They're bringing food. They're letting you stay in their house. You get all this hospitality and warm, behavior and everything like that. And then you go back to
your responsibilities are almost zilch. You just got to keep yourself
right.
alive.
You're just walking. So, it really narrows down. Like, what do you have? Kind of like your basic needs,
right?
And you just strip away all the bullshit, the cell phones, the internet, the worrying about a job, worrying I got to go in here for 8 hours a day and act like I want to be here even though I don't want to be here.
Existence.
Yeah, like you really don't have to put on a show because unfortunately that's a lot of people's stories. They wake up in the morning, they don't want to go to work. They don't want to spend 8 hours every day, 5 days a week with people that they don't really like, people that, doing something they don't want to do, staring at a screen, typing in numbers. If you're in like customer service, you got to be like this weird, like fake person 8 hours
right,
a day, pretending
hello,
like you
sir.
give a shit about some stupid ass thing they're trying to buy. Yeah. I guess when you look at it that way, it's pretty fucking depressing. I wouldn't want to go back. Oh yeah. All right. Anything else that you want to add?
I mean, I guess for anyone who's thinking about doing it or any grand adventure, it comes down to just wanting it. You have to want it in order for it to be accomplished. Because there were several people I ran into on the trail. That were just day hikers or they were out for the weekend or something. They'd ask you, "Oh, are you a thru hiker?" Like, "Yep, yeah, I'm a thru hiker." Like, "Oh, that's great. I really admire you for that." It's like, don't admire it. If you want to do it,
you want to do it,
it's
just
here.
do it. No,
it's
you're already on the trail, sir. Like you can.
I mean, yes, it takes some degree of sacrifice, but I mean, if you think it's going to be worth it. And you want it wholeheartedly, I mean, it's there. You just got to take the time to do it.
Yeah, I think that's true. If you're a single person and you don't have kids or something like that, see, that's when it gets kind of squirrely.
Well, the other thing, I mean, I don't know. You can make as many excuses as you want for it in order for it not to happen.
Yeah.
But, I mean, there's people like Mama Bear and her 3 cubs that were out on the trail. And she's a mother with 3 kids out there. And,
but if you're with somebody who's not really about all that, and you've got kids, and you can't really do that, though. Some people, you can't tell your wife, hey, by the way, I'm going away for 4 months. She's gonna say, "Fuck you! You're not leaving me with 3 fucking kids to go do this trail hike." So I think there's definitely limitations on it, but people that want to do it, but you're always gonna have those people that are I'm gonna do it, or you read it on Facebook all the time, Facebook or Twitter, people say things oh, this and that and the other thing, that's definitely in my future. But they say that about everything.
Right.
And you're like, dude, that's not in your future. That's not even close. You're one of these people that just wants to talk about this shit. You're not actually going to go do something. And then you've got people that I'm sure probably were on the trail that were just started off as a day hike. And they were like, you know what?
Let's just
I
keep
don't think
going.
I'm going home today. I think I'm just going to keep the fuck going. I'm not going back to the trailer today. I'm not going back to the office. I'm not going back to work. Whatever the thing is, I just started hiking, and
from all walks of life.
No point in going back. Well, that's pretty cool. It's definitely cool. Look forward to any new stuff, new adventures, and if people are wanting to do it, they can definitely do it. Would you still active on your Twitter?
Somewhat. Here and there.
What's your Twitter handle for people that might have a question or anything?
I believe it's Joseph_James 22. I think that's what it is. You could pull it up real quick.
Yeah, let me see. Well, we'll put it in the show notes on the thing that way. See, the internet's being a little goofy, and I noticed our video camera was being a little goofy, but not too bad for the inaugural episode here. So we figured we might have a few technical difficulties, and that's definitely one of them. So we'll have to get that situated. But Joe, definitely thank you for coming on by,
Thanks for having me,
and all that stuff, and we'll see how these next episodes go. We got a bunch of crazy people that want to come by and talk some crazy bullshit in the microphone. So we'll see how it goes. All right, thanks, man.
Mm-hmm.
All right.